When my uncle caught me indulging in self-play, this happened a true infidelity story. Picture the instant your uncle enters and discovers you in the most personal act conceivable. What comes next? A moment of uncomfortable stillness? A tense encounter? You won't believe how everything unraveled when my uncle caught me red-handed. It all started with the gentle sunlight streaming through the trees outside my Uncle Tom's house, casting golden streaks across the floor. I found myself facing the full-length mirror in the guest room, the very one I had always steered clear of during my visits, primarily due to my aversion to self-reflection. Yet today, an unusual sensation lingered in the air. I had been visiting my uncle's home for years, seeking refuge from the clamor of my urban existence. However, this time it seemed distinct. Perhaps it was due to the fact that I had changed in some way. I hadn't even intended to remain there this long, but I found myself unable to resist. An unusual sensation stirred within me, as if I was truly encountering my own self for the very first time, genuinely perceiving who I am. The girl in the mirror appeared simultaneously known and foreign, resembling someone I felt I should recognize yet couldn't fully identify. I found myself in a liminal space, caught between the innocence of youth and the responsibilities of adulthood. I approached the mirror, scrutinizing my reflection. I had recently celebrated my 17th birthday, and I could sense the transformations unfolding within me. My face had taken on a fuller appearance, my features now exuding a softer quality. My body, oh how it has transformed so significantly over the past year. My hips had a fuller shape, my waist was more defined, and I began to notice a shift in how I carried myself, exuding more confidence. I ran my fingers through my hair, feeling the strands glide beneath my touch. It had grown longer, cascading just past my shoulders, and it possessed a natural wave that eluded my attempts at control. Yet today, it appeared almost elegant in the way it outlined my face. I found myself at a point where I began to appreciate my appearance more than before. I couldn't recall a moment when I wasn't aware of my appearance, but something within me had transformed, and now I was beginning to embrace the changes. I tilted my head, allowing the gentle light from the window to caress my skin. There was a warmth present, a warmth I had never truly acknowledged before. It felt like I was finally becoming one with myself, and for the first time, I embraced that feeling of comfort. I glided my hand along my arm, sensing the sleekness of my skin and the warmth that lay beneath it. I was no longer just a girl. I was transforming into someone new, someone I could truly take pride in. Just as I was about to turn away from the mirror, the sound of footsteps behind me caught my attention. I froze, my heart racing into my throat, and I turned around swiftly. In the doorway stood my uncle. I was unaware of his arrival. He stood there, arms casually crossed, his dark eyes fixed on me in a way that momentarily stole my breath. I felt paralyzed, ensnared by his stare, uncertain of how to respond or what action to take. It wasn't how he had always regarded me, like a niece, but rather something distinct in the way he was gazing at me now. I swiftly lowered my gaze, a wave of warmth flooding my cheeks. "Oh, I didn't hear you knock," I said, stepping away from the mirror and shifting my weight, feeling a bit anxious. My heart raced with an intensity one couldn't quite comprehend, leaving me in a state of bewilderment. He smiled, yet there was a subtle tension in it, as if he were caught in a dilemma between voicing his thoughts or allowing the moment to drift away. "It's fine," he said, his voice soft, his eyes lingering on me. "I simply wasn't certain if you caught what I said." I apologize for the interruption. I nodded, attempting to dismiss the rapid thrum of my heartbeat. He had a certain quality that consistently stirred a delightful unease within me. He had transformed in my perception. He was no longer just my uncle. Instead, he was evolving into something different, and I found myself uncertain about whether I was prepared to confront that reality just yet. His youthful good looks and attractive features always sparked something within me. I inhaled deeply, attempting to soothe the restless beating in my chest. I said, "You didn't interrupt," the words feeling clumsy as they slipped from my lips. I was merely observing my reflection. It felt absurd. Even as the words left my lips, who stands before a mirror and simply gazes at their reflection? Yet, today held a quality that made it seem as though I was encountering my own reflection for the very first time. Tom pushed off from the doorframe and took a step toward me, his gaze unwavering, still locked on mine. He was standing so close now, his presence enveloping the space between us. Once more my breath hitched in my throat, and I sensed the warmth spreading across my skin. I shifted uncomfortably, yet he appeared oblivious to my discomfort. "You look different," he said, his voice soft yet unwavering that I hesitated, uncertain of how to reply. "What do you mean?" I inquired, a warm blush creeping even further across my cheeks. "I don't know," he said, stepping a little closer. "There's something about you, it's just something. You seem to have matured. As if you're evolving into a different person, a more resilient one." His words seemed to penetrate deep within me, leaving me momentarily at a loss for how to respond. No one had ever truly expressed anything quite like that to me before. I was unsure how to process it, yet it brought a sense of satisfaction that I felt genuine. As if I was beginning to perceive myself through the eyes of others that I suppose I am, I murmured gently, a faint smile gracing my lips as I cast my gaze downward, attempting to conceal the unease that was slowly rising within me. "I've been evolving in various aspects." A lengthy silence enveloped us, and I sensed his eyes fixed upon me. I kept my gaze fixed on the floor, feeling a wave of uncertainty wash over me once more. What was it about his gaze that felt so intense? It felt as if I had ceased to be his niece, as if he were encountering me anew. "I believe it suits you," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You appear quite impressive." I swallowed, a rush of warmth flooding my face. My heart raced, and for a fleeting moment, I found myself at a loss for action. Was he merely being considerate, or was there a deeper meaning behind his words? Before I could respond, he took a step back, creating some distance, as if he suddenly understood how near he had come. "He is CL." He rubbed his throat, running a hand through his hair, and I could sense he was a bit flustered now as well. "Well," he remarked with a subtle smile, his tone lifting once more. "I'll let you carry on." "Hello there." I nodded swiftly, a blend of relief and disappointment washing over me as he turned and exited the room. That I lingered for a moment longer, enveloped by the warmth of his words and the way he had gazed at me. It had an undeniable quality, a certain allure that quickened my heartbeat and sent my thoughts swirling. Perhaps I wasn't merely transforming on the surface. Perhaps something was evolving within me as well. He smiled, a subtle, nearly melancholic smile. "Thank you," he said, his voice brimming with appreciation. "That holds more significance than you realize." For a moment we simply stood there, the silence enveloping us, dense yet oddly reassuring. In that fleeting moment it felt like we had reached an unvoiced agreement, a shared acknowledgement of the limits we had both navigated, and yet, there remained an unshakable tension, a sense that we were balancing on the brink of something elusive. Something we couldn't fully articulate. As he turned to leave, he paused in the doorway, glancing back at me with an expression that I couldn't quite decipher. It was an expression of openness, of reliance, yet tinged with wariness, as though he were advising me to proceed with care. In that instant, it dawned on me that amidst all that connected us, all the truths we had unearthed, there remained an abundance of words yet to be spoken. I understood that this was just the beginning, that the questions racing through my mind would not find simple answers. For the moment, all I could do was bide my time, allowing the tension to brew, and trust that eventually the truth would come to light. The days that followed felt distinct, imbued with an energy I couldn't quite identify. Each encounter with my uncle was tinged with a delicate nuance, an emotion that had not been present prior to our late-night discussion in my room. I caught him stealing glances in my direction when he believed I was oblivious, his eyes reflecting a blend of curiosity and an unspoken warmth that lingered in the air. One evening, he asked me to accompany him for a drive, a pastime we frequently enjoyed during my youth. He claimed it was just to get some fresh air, yet I could feel there was something deeper at play. His tone carried a hint of excitement, as if he were inviting me into a secret realm he had long kept concealed. The sun dipped below the horizon as we navigated the twisting backroads, the golden light enveloping the fields in a soft, warm embrace. The peculiar tranquility enveloped me in his presence, a sense of belonging that had eluded me for far too long. The quiet moments we shared felt easy, broken only by the gentle purr of the engine, and the sporadic whisper of the trees as we moved by. Eventually, he stopped by a small clearing, a place we had often frequented years ago. He reclined against the car's hood, his eyes unfocused as he stared into the distance, lost in thought while surveying the horizon. I joined him, sensing the warmth of the metal beneath me. The intimacy we shared was both soothing and in a way electrifying. Do you recall? Is this the spot? He inquired, his voice gentle. Indeed, I responded with a grin. You used to take me here frequently. You mentioned it was your hidden retreat. He let out a soft laugh, giving a nod. Certain aspects remain constant. We lingered in that moment, observing the sun descend beneath the horizon. As the sky transformed into a canvas of orange and pink hues, the warmth radiated from him, his presence both familiar and grounding, and yet, there was an uncharted territory, an unvoiced connection lingering between us. After a brief pause, he shifted his gaze to me, his expression gentler than I had ever witnessed. I'm truly happy that you're here. It has been some time since I experienced a sense of being truly understood. The word struck me unexpectedly, and I felt compelled to reach out, resting my hand on his arm. I'm pleased to be here as well, I murmured softly. I've longed for this, longed for us. He glanced at my hand, a subtle smile tugging at the corners of his lips. In a moment that felt both instinctive and dreamlike, he leaned in, his face just inches from mine. We lost all sense of restraint, and everything that unfolded between us was beyond our control. Our bodies intertwined, embracing one another in a manner that seemed destined. I sensed his breath, warm and steady, and before I realized it, our lips connected in a gentle, tender kiss. It was soft, imbued with a silent comprehension, a warmth that appeared to permeate every part of my essence. For a brief instant, time appeared to freeze, the surroundings dissolving into nothingness, until there remained just the two of us, ensnared in that ephemeral, exquisite moment. It wasn't rushed or hurried. It was a gentle, authentic expression of the bond we had formed, a connection that felt both fresh and familiar. As we finally withdrew, he gazed at me with a blend of astonishment and something more profound, something unshielded. I don't know what came over me, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. A smile crept across my face as an unusual tranquility enveloped me. Perhaps it was destined to unfold this way. He nodded slowly, as though taking in the significance of my words. Perhaps, he repeated, his gaze probing into mine, imbued with a subtle intensity that rendered me breathless. We lingered there, side by side, the silence enveloping us, both soothing and electric. Every one of us was absorbed in our own reflections. The atmosphere was heavy with a profound sense of connection, a tie that seemed more intense than anything I had ever experienced. In that moment, it felt as though we had stepped over an unseen boundary, one that neither of us could or would ever return from. As the stars began to emerge, he grasped my hand softly, offering a tender squeeze. Silence enveloped us, an unspoken understanding that required no elaboration on our emotions. All that needed to be expressed was captured in that simple gesture, a warmth that communicated so much. At last, we found our way back to the car. The journey back was enveloped in a soothing quiet, each of us relishing the warmth of that collective experience. A profound sense of intimacy enveloped us, an unspoken understanding that transcended language. It felt like we had discovered a hidden facet of OU. We hadn't known this part of ourselves existed, a part that had been waiting for this moment all along. Upon our return to the house, he paused for a moment, his eyes locking onto mine with a gentle, nearly fragile look. Thank you, he murmured softly, for this evening, for all that has transpired. I nodded, a smile playing at the corners of my mouth. Whenever you need. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on the evening in my mind. The recollection of his warmth, his proximity, remains vivid. It was an indescribable sensation, a blend of tranquility and exhilaration, a recognition that something beautiful had begun to flourish between us, something destined to deepen with the passage of time. The days that followed were rich with serene moments, moments that resonated more profoundly than any words ever could. We exchanged fleeting looks from across the room, our fingers brushing in a way that was both instinctive and thrilling. It felt like we were both twirling around a hidden truth, a bond that was as undeniable as it was surprising. One afternoon, while we were collaborating on a project in the garage, he gently brushed a stray lock of hair from my face. his touch lingering for just a moment longer than needed as I raised my eyes to meet his gaze. A wave of warmth washed over me, enveloping me in a sense of belonging that was both comforting and exhilarating. Without hesitation, I leaned in, placing a gentle kiss on his cheek. He gazed at me, surprise dancing in his eyes. But then a smile broke across his face, a warmth in his gaze that made my heart flutter. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice brimming with appreciation. "For what purpose? For your presence. For your comprehension." I felt the gravity of his words, the intensity of his emotions, and I was certain that this was genuine, that what we had was something unique and exquisite. It wasn't merely a passing instant. It marked the dawn of something that would mold us in ways we had yet to grasp. With each passing week, our connection deepened. Every day unfolded with gentle instances of comfort, of mutual comprehension. It was a bond that transcended language, an emotion that echoed in each look, every caress and every exchanged grin. Even though the destination of this path was uncertain, I felt an undeniable sense of belonging, a realization that I had discovered something profoundly meaningful, something that would remain with me regardless of where life may lead us. It was finally time for the hiking trip we had been dreaming about for years. The sun began its descent, casting shades of pink and orange across the sky while we perched on the cliff's edge, gazing down at the valley below. The breeze was cool yet gentle, a refreshing touch that awakens the senses and brings a sense of vitality to the moment. The evening unfolded beautifully, and I found it hard to believe we were here, just the two of us, far removed from the rest of the world, that I couldn't overlook the reality that our connection ran deeper than merely an uncle-niece bond. And sitting here with nothing but the wind, the silence, and the endless sky between us, I could feel it in every glance, every sigh. The distance we traversed together. "Wow," Tom murmured, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper as he gazed out over the landscape. "This is astonishing," I nodded, my gaze following the contours of the hills sprawling out ahead of us. The expanse of the world stretched out beneath me, yet in this moment everything felt remarkably close, almost intimate. "Absolutely, it's incredible. I can hardly believe we've finally arrived at this moment." We had been discussing this trip for months, meticulously planning every detail, where we would stay, which trails we would hike, and even the songs we would play during the drive. And now here we were. The reality of it felt almost dreamlike. Uncle Tom glanced in my direction, a subtle smile dancing on his lips. "I'm pleased we took this step." I doubt I would have mustered the bravery to come alone. I could see in the way his gaze locked onto mine that he was sincere. Tom was consistently the center of attention, the one who brought humor and made everyone feel comfortable. In moments like this, I glimpsed a side of him that was rarely revealed, one that was quiet, contemplative, and a touch more earnest. It was difficult to envision him as anything other than self-assured. Yet I understood there were facets of him that remained concealed. "I'm truly happy we're here as well," I remarked gently. "This was necessary for me. I've been incredibly occupied with everything lately. It's refreshing to take a break and step away for a bit." The words lingered in the air for a moment, and then Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand that. At times life can feel incredibly overwhelming." I shifted, drawing my knees to my chest as I embraced them with my arms. It felt at ease here, as if I could express thoughts I typically kept to myself, ideas that had been lingering for some time but hadn't found the appropriate moment to voice. "I sense that things are shifting," I confessed, my voice now softer. "It feels as though I'm evolving. I can't quite put it into words, but it feels as though I'm on the brink of a new discovery, as if I'm uncovering my true self." He regarded me for an extended moment, his gaze soft and tender. "You're not the only one feeling that way." I share those feelings. Strange, don't you think? One moment you are simply yourself and the next you have transformed into an entirely different being. Distinct. His words carried a depth of understanding that made my heart swell just a bit. He wasn't merely engaging in conversation to occupy the quiet. He was truly attentive, genuinely absorbing every word, and that transformed everything. Distinction. "I suppose we're both navigating this together," I remarked with a gentle smile. "However, it's refreshing to have someone who understands." His smile deepened and I noticed a flicker in his eyes, something that felt both familiar and fresh. "I'm truly happy to be here with you. You have consistently been a person I can confide in." The manner in which he expressed it was I felt acknowledged in a manner I had not completely grasped previously. I always believed we were merely two individuals who crossed paths, sharing a handful of moments, chuckles and moments of profound dialogue. However, this journey had transformed something within. It felt as though they were perceiving each other in a new way, transcending the boundaries of friendship and evolving into something deeper. "I'm pleased you're here as well," I remarked. Meeting his gaze directly this time, there was something in his gaze hat made my heart flutter, and for a moment I pondered whether he could sense the same shift between us. "This trip is undoubtedly the best decision we've made. It feels as though we are embarking on a fresh journey." The quiet that enveloped us had become a soothing presence, no longer uncomfortable. Just as I had anticipated, that it felt as though we were both digesting everything we had expressed and experienced, allowing it to linger within us before we spoke once more. Uncle Tom was the first to shatter the stillness, his voice softer than usual, tinged with a hint of uncertainty. "Have you ever contemplated what lies ahead?" His inquiry took me by surprise. It wasn't something I anticipated to encounter, and yet it felt like precisely the sort of inquiry I had been pondering. The future loomed as a vast enigma. The more I ponder, the more I reflect on it, the more I sense that I don't have everything sorted out. I'm uncertain about my destination and the person I will become. I simply feel a strong desire to seize every opportunity of the time I possess now. He nodded, his gaze contemplative. "Absolutely, I understand that. It seems as though there's an expectation for us to have everything meticulously organized. Yet the reality is that we're navigating through each day, piecing things together as we go." I smiled, experiencing a wave of relief in his words. It was comforting to realize that another person shared the same feelings of uncertainty and doubt about what lies ahead. It gave me a sense of companionship in my reflections. "I suppose we're all just navigating our paths," I remarked, with a touch more assurance this time. "Perhaps we don't have to have everything sorted out. Perhaps it's perfectly fine to approach things gradually, one step at a time." He smiled back, the burden of his words easing as he let out a soft chuckle. "Perhaps it's not essential for us to have all the answers. However, I believe we are both managing quite well up to this point." I chuckled, the sound airy and unburdened. I agree with that sentiment. There was a certain quality in his words, a nuance that enveloped me in warmth. It wasn't merely a casual remark. It was in the way he gazed at me, the way he made me feel significant. In that moment, perched on the edge of the cliff with him, I came to understand that perhaps, just perhaps, he was the kind of person who would stand by me amid all the uncertainty, through every shift and transformation. And perhaps for the first time, I found myself at ease with not having all the answers. The sky had deepened into darkness, and the stars were starting to shimmer overhead. It was serene, and for an extended period, neither of us uttered a word. We simply sat there, side by side, allowing the stillness of the world to envelop you. With the last, I faced him, my voice gentle yet unwavering. "Thanks, Tom, for being present, for everything that has transpired." He glanced my way, a gentle and sincere smile gracing his face. "At any moment that I'm pleased we're sharing this moment." In that moment, I realized that this trip, this evening, this time spent with him, transcended the beautiful view or the thrill of adventure. The essence lay in the connection we shared, the bond that had deepened between us as time passed. As we sat side by side, observing the stars emerge one after another, a profound tranquility washed over me, reassuring me that regardless of what lay ahead, we would confront it together. In the days that followed our silent, unvoiced moment, a fresh cadence took root in our lives. It felt like we unearthed a concealed dimension to our bond, one that we both acknowledged but decided to allow to develop gradually, at its own rhythm. There were no grand declarations or obvious shifts in our routine, but an unspoken understanding wove itself into our conversations, our shared glances, the way we seemed to gravitate toward each other. Every now and then he would catch me with a quiet smile, and my heart would race in a way that felt both exhilarating and grounding. Our lives unfolded, defined by comforting routines and serene moments, yet each one resonated with a newfound vibrancy, a heightened sense of existence. Our closeness seemed to provide a fresh perspective, making the world appear more vibrant and imbued with significance. One evening, we discovered ourselves gathered on the back porch. The gentle murmur of crickets enveloped the surroundings, The sky was adorned in hues of rich indigo, with stars twinkling overhead, while the gentle summer breeze brought a feeling of tranquility. We conversed about all and nothing, our voices soft as we exchanged tales, aspirations, and gentle musings. "I've always cherished this place," he whispered, his eyes locked on the stars above. "This place has an undeniable quality to it that it feels as though it possesses a spirit all its own." I nodded, sensing a profound bond with the space, with the memories it contained. That it truly feels like home, I replied, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. He glanced in my direction, his expression gently illuminated by the soft glow of the dim light. "You're an essential element in creating that feeling." The words lingered, imbued with a sincerity that struck a profound chord. A gentle warmth enveloped me, accompanied by a profound sense of gratitude that eluded my attempts to articulate. His words carried an undeniable authenticity, evoking a feeling that transcended anything I had experienced prior. In that moment, a memory surged forth, one from years past, when I was merely a child. He had introduced me to fishing for the first time, guiding me with patience as he demonstrated how to bait the hook, cast the line, and wait for a bite. I had been restless, yearning for a change to unfold. He imparted to me the significance of patience, of relishing the serene moments that lie in between. And here we were years later, still discovering from one another, still relishing the serene moments that occupied the gaps between our expressions. As the night deepened, we sat there side by side, a cozy silence wrapping around us, his hand brushed against mine. A gentle, unpretentious gesture that was both familiar and fresh. I glanced at him, our eyes locking, and in that moment all else vanished. It was merely the two of us, intertwined by a bond that eluded any form of description. Our hands intertwined, fingers lacing together in a manner that felt both instinctive and deeply meaningful. I rested my head on his shoulder, sensing the rhythmic rise and fall of his breath, the warmth of his presence anchoring me in a way I had never experienced before. Words were unnecessary to convey the connection we shared. In that serene intimacy where our hands intertwined seamlessly, there blossomed an unvoiced comprehension that deepened with every fleeting second. Eventually he shifted, turning to face me with a tenderness in his eyes that made my heart skip a beat. "I don't know where this is going," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "However, I am eager to discover." I nodded, a smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "Same here." With that, it felt as though a burden had been released, as if we had finally recognized the journey we had been traversing side by side. There was no urgency, no requirement to categorize or name what we shared. It was sufficient to allow it to develop naturally, to let every moment serve as a testament to the bond we shared. Constructed. The days stretched into weeks, each one brimming with subtle, serene moments that wove together the tapestry of our existence. We would embark on lengthy journeys, navigating the serpentine paths that unfurled like ribbons stretched across the countryside, weaving together laughter and stories as they journeyed onward. Evenings would find us in the kitchen, cooking side by side, our movements flowing in perfect harmony. That felt natural and genuine. In those moments, a profound sense of belonging enveloped me, a feeling that I was precisely where I was destined to be. One morning as I gazed out the window, witnessing the first light of dawn unfurl across the sky, a profound sense of peace enveloped me. Myself. It was a serene, modest tranquility, one that stemmed from understanding.